She walked into the elite tech convention in thrift store shoes, holding her 8-year-old son's hand. They laughed at her, mocked her, told her she did not belong. But everything changed when the boy stopped in front of a challenge that had stumped engineers for 3 years and solved it in minutes. What no one knew was that this mother had once built systems the world runs on, and now she was about to change everything again. The lobby of the Meridian Global Convention Center gleamed under bright glass chandeliers. Marble floors reflected the sharp silhouettes of tailored suits, high heels, and laminated VIP badges. Conversations hummed in polished tones. Words like machine learning, valuation, and acquisition floated through the air. Amid the parade of prestige walked a woman in worn flats and a navy cardigan, one button missing near the collar. Her long dark hair was loosely tied, her face bare but beautiful in a quiet, confident way. Her name was Claire Dawson. Beside her, holding her hand tightly, was an 8-year-old boy in a hoodie covered in hand-drawn space doodles. His name was Leo. His backpack was slightly too big for his frame, and his eyes scanned everything around him with electric curiosity. Claire approached the registration desk, trying to keep Leo close. "Hi, I am here under the guest list for the Open Innovation Panel," she said calmly. The man behind the counter gave her a once-over, then glanced down at his tablet. He frowned. "Name? Claire Dawson." He typed. Paused. Then looked at Leo. "This is not a daycare," he said without smiling. "I am aware," Claire replied evenly. "He is with me." From behind them someone chuckled. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn into a soup kitchen." Claire turned but did not respond. Leo, confused, gripped her hand tighter. A group of engineers passed by, eyeing them with amused suspicion. One, a junior dev wearing designer sneakers, whispered just loudly enough, "She probably thinks this is a catering gig." Leo looked up at his mother. "Are we not supposed to be here?" She leaned down and whispered with a smile, "Of course we are. Everyone starts somewhere." As they moved past the crowd, Leo froze in front of a large whiteboard display near the stage. His eyes widened. It read in bold, "AI Challenge. Identify and fix the logic error in our legacy search engine. Unsolved for 3 years. Prize, $100,000. Leo's mouth opened slightly. "Mom, this is it. This is the bug I saw in the demo video last week, the one with the recursive loop that does not terminate." Claire smiled, brushing his hair back. "Not bad for bedtime reading." Across the hall, a tall man in a charcoal suit leaned against a column, watching them. Ethan Cruz, 33, CEO of Veritas Tech, stood alone with a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, though he was no longer looking at the screen. His sharp features softened slightly as he watched the boy approach the whiteboard. He had heard the comment about the soup kitchen. He had seen the stares, but he also saw something else. An ease between mother and son, the kind that could not be faked. Leo reached for a dry erase marker resting at the edge of the stand. A nearby staff member moved quickly. "Sir, I am sorry, but this area is for participants only." Claire gently placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. Let us not cause any trouble." But Ethan stepped forward. "It is an open challenge," he said, voice steady. "Anyone can try." The staffer paused, then reluctantly nodded. Leo smiled, uncapped the marker and approached the board. Claire crossed her arms and watched, heart thumping. She had seen this look before. At home, when he solved puzzles meant for adults. At the museum, when he reverse-engineered the ticket scanner in under 2 minutes. Now, in front of the tech world's elite, he began to write. One line, then another. His marker danced across the whiteboard with surprising calm for a child his age. And for the first time that morning, the laughter around them stopped. Claire Dawson stood in the shadow of the towering whiteboard, eyes locked on her son's tiny hand as it moved with precision. The morning had started like any other, but now, watching Leo solve what teams of engineers had failed to untangle for years, her world tilted on its axis once again. She remembered the first time she realized he was different. Leo was only 3 years old when he dismantled the microwave. Not out of mischief, but to see if the light turned off when the door closed. At 4, he built a working calculator out of discarded remote controls and copper wire. At 6, he started asking questions about entropy and neural networks. Claire had once worked with some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, but Leo was born thinking in logic trees and Boolean queries. And yet no one in that conference hall had a clue who Claire really was. Not the young engineer who laughed at her shoes. Not the hostess who pretended not to see her in line for coffee. Not even Ethan Cruz, though his gaze held something deeper than curiosity. As if he sensed she was more than she claimed to be. 7 years earlier, Claire was not wearing thrift store sweaters or waiting tables in the evening hours. She had been Claire Dawson, Vice President of AI Integration at Orion Systems, a multinational tech powerhouse. She had led global teams, filed patents, and spoken at top-tier summits. The industry had called her a visionary, until it all unraveled. Her husband Marcus had been an aerospace analyst, a kind soul, always tinkering, always smiling. They were building a life full of brilliance and purpose. And then, one rainy October evening, a truck swerved through a red light. The hospital said it was instant. Claire's world shattered. She gave birth to Leo 2 months later, alone in a sterile delivery room with no one waiting outside. She held him, skin to skin, and whispered, "You are all I have now." For a while, she tried to go back to work, but grief fogged her brilliance. Board meetings turned to migraines, memos turned into missed deadlines. And then came the final blow, an executive boardroom betrayal. Claire had uncovered illegal use of biometric data within the company's newest AI rollout. When she tried to expose it, they silenced her. She could have fought, but she was already too broken, and Leo needed stability. So she walked away. No press, no lawsuits, just quiet vanishing. She moved to a small town outside San Jose, changed her last name in school records, and worked odd jobs, tutoring, teaching piano, waiting tables at a cafe with flexible shifts. Anything to stay close to Leo and off the radar. She raised him like a secret. Their nights were full of code and cartoons, takeout and bedtime logic puzzles. He would ask, "Was Dad like me?" And she would smile, in all the best ways. Leo never questioned why they lived simply, or why she never went near a computer in public. But he noticed everything. "Mom," he once said, "I think you are hiding something, but it is okay, I like us this way." She smiled and tapped his forehead. "It is not hiding, it is just choosing where to shine." He had begged her to attend the tech convention when he saw the open event link online. "I do not care if we just watch from the back. I want to see the real world, the one you use to build things in." Claire said yes because he asked so sweetly, but part of her had wanted to go too. Part of her missed that world, the electricity of discovery, the sound of keyboards at 2 in the morning, the thrill of ideas no one had solved yet. But she did not expect this. Now, Leo stood on his tiptoes, still writing, refactoring nested logic into something elegant and shockingly simple. Around them, murmurs grew. Engineers began taking photos. A few leaned in. One of them whispered, "Wait, is that recursive reduction through self-definition?" Claire stayed still. A moment later, Leo capped the marker and turned back to her. "Done." She blinked. "You are sure?" He nodded. It was looping every time it hit an undefined node in the 4th-level query chain. "I just gave it a base case." She laughed, a soft, stunned sound. "Of course you did." She glanced to the side and saw Ethan Cruz watching, not with disbelief, but with something like wonder. And Claire, for the first time in years, felt something stir inside her. Not fear, not grief, but possibility. For a moment, no one spoke. The whiteboard stood like a monument to what had just happened. 3 years of silence cracked open by an 8-year-old, with a shy smile and a beat-up backpack. Then the murmurs began. Is that actually working? No way. Check the logs again. A junior engineer who had scoffed earlier now hovered near the screen connected to the back-end test server. His fingers danced nervously across the keys. Slowly, lines of green text filled the monitor. No errors. As results, he turned around. It is clean, it passed every condition. A hush swept across the coding arena. One by one, heads turned toward the boy still standing quietly by the board, as if waiting for someone to scold him. Claire reached for his hand, but Leo looked up, eyes wide. Did I do something wrong? A voice rose above the crowd, calm, direct, unmistakable. No, you did something extraordinary. Ethan Cruz stepped into the circle, his dark suit casting a sharp silhouette beneath the industrial lighting. All eyes shifted to him as he moved closer to the boy. You rewrote the query chain logic? Ethan asked. Leo nodded. The recursive structure was breaking because there was no termination check for the anomaly parameters. I just reversed it and built in a limit loop. Ethan glanced back at the screen and then at the engineers, some of whom were already pulling out phones, others whispering to each other. What is your name? Leo Dawson. Ethan's eyes flicked toward Claire, who was now standing still, but guarded. He gave her the slightest nod, an unspoken recognition that this woman and her son were not who they seemed. Before anything more could be said, the tension shattered. A woman in a sleek navy pantsuit pushed her way through the crowd. Miranda Kessler, one of Veritas Tech's lead product executives and a notorious name in industry politics, stepped forward. You let a child touch the live code board? She snapped. Was solving the challenge, Ethan said coolly. Miranda's eyes narrowed. This is not a playground, Ethan. This is a corporate security risk. Someone nearby muttered, You mean the kid who just did what no one here could in 3 years? Miranda ignored it. Claire stepped forward now, voice calm but firm. We followed the rules. It was an open challenge. Miranda's expression twisted with recognition. Claire Dawson, from Orion. The murmurs surged louder. Claire stayed composed. That was a long time ago. I remember you, Miranda said sharply. You disappeared. Thought you had burned out. Claire smiled gently. Or maybe I just walked away. Miranda turned back to Ethan. We cannot legitimize this. Letting a waitress and a kid tamper with our flagship platform? Investors are watching. Claire's face stayed still. She had heard worse. But Leo flinched. A waitress? He whispered. But, Mom, you built AI stuff. You showed me the patents. Claire crouched beside him. That is not something to be ashamed of. I work hard so we can live simply, and I still build things, remember? Leo nodded slowly, confused but trusting. Ethan looked between them. Enough. He turned to the crowd. Let me be clear. That boy just solved a bug that cost us millions in diagnostics and man-house. I do not care if he did it wearing pajamas from a treehouse. And if his mother has the background I suspect she does, then maybe we should stop talking and start listening. For the first time since they entered, Claire saw respect in the eyes around her. But she also saw something else. Fear. Because the room was realizing that power had just shifted. And not everyone was ready to accept that it came wearing a hoodie and carrying a hand-packed lunch. It started with a single tweet. Did anyone else recognize that woman with the coding kid? Claire Dawson, ex-Orion Systems VP? Within the hour, screenshots surfaced, old conference photos, LinkedIn posts from years ago, a blurry image of Claire accepting an award at a global AI summit. The internet did what it did best: dig fast, judge faster. By late afternoon, Claire's name was trending. The waitress who coded. Where did Claire go? Holding code genius. Some called her a hero, others questioned her disappearance. Well, did a tech VP vanish for 7 years? Hide her son's talent. Ethan Cruz sat in his corner office, the skyline of downtown San Francisco stretching behind him, his phone buzzing non-stop. PR requests, investor inquiries, and dozens of headlines. He closed the browser window and stared out the glass. Claire Dawson. He had known there was something about her, the way she carried herself, quiet but unafraid, the way she chose words like someone used to commanding rooms full of engineers and egos. But he had not expected this. A knock at the door. It was Claire. She looked calm, if tired. Her coat still smelled faintly of the cafe she worked in. No makeup, no mask. "You saw it?" she asked. "I did," Ethan replied, gesturing for her to sit. She remained standing. "People want to comment," he said. "Everyone does. I've figured. Do you want to tell me why you left it all behind?" Claire exhaled slowly. "I had just buried my husband," she said. "I was 7 months pregnant and sitting in meetings with people who cared more about launch dates than lives. Then I discovered a massive ethics breach in the AI data we were about to release. I raised it. They buried it." Ethan's expression darkened. "They offered me hush money," she continued. "I walked instead." He leaned forward. "Why not go public?" Claire shrugged. "I was grieving, I was angry, and I was pregnant. My world had already imploded. I chose silence over battle, and then I chose Leo." The room was quiet for a beat. "And now?" he asked. "I am not here for revenge," she said, "and I am not interested in someone else using my name for headlines. What I want is to protect my son and keep building." Ethan nodded. "I want to offer you a role," he said. "Consulting. Quiet. Your own hours. And a full scholarship for Leo." Claire arched an eyebrow. "Sounds generous." "It is not charity," Ethan replied. "It is need." She studied him for a long moment. "I am not sure I want to walk back into boardrooms. They do not tend to welcome ghosts." "You are not a ghost," he said. "You are exactly what this industry needs." She smiled, just slightly. "I will think about it." And she left without shaking his hand. But something in her eyes said she was not walking away, not yet. 3 days later, Ethan Cruz stood on the stage of the Veritas Tech Global keynote, facing an audience of over 2,000 investors, engineers, and journalists. Cameras flashed, screens behind him glowed with real-time analytics, graphs, and AI product demos. This was supposed to be the company's victory lap. The new Veritas AI suite was billed as the most adaptive intelligence system in consumer history. Years in development, over 200 engineers, billions in projected value. Ethan tapped the touchscreen to trigger the final live demo, a personalized search interface integrated into smart home systems. The lights dimmed, the display activated, and then nothing. A long pause. Then, null query parameter exception, core engine failure. The second line of code error scrolled up. The room stilled. On stage, Ethan's throat tightened. He looked to the wings where Miranda, his executive VP, stood pale and frozen. Someone whispered in the front row, "Is this a repeat of Orion Systems all over again?" He stepped off stage calmly, but behind the curtain, chaos erupted. "It was tested last night," an engineer insisted. "This should not be possible. The logic loop's firing again. We thought it was isolated to the legacy version." Ethan's mind raced. And then Leo's voice. Not literally, but a memory. Back at the convention, Leo had looked at the code on the challenge screen and said softly, "This part here, it goes in a circle unless you tell it when to stop." Did they forget that? At the time, Ethan had smiled, but now that observation rang like a warning bell. He called his CTO into a side room. "Bring me everything from the legacy query chain, logs, audit trails, right now." An hour later, it was confirmed the crash had come from a core logic flaw that should have been caught in early QA. A flaw Leo had already spotted days earlier. The Veritas stock dropped 12% by close of day. Social media erupted with Veritas fail memes. Analysts questioned Ethan's leadership. One headline read, "Visionary CEO or Vanity CEO?" Board members demanded an emergency meeting. That night, Ethan sat in his office, face buried in his hands. The door opened quietly. Claire stepped in, holding a manila folder. "No one saw the bug," Ethan said without looking up, "except your son." Claire set the folder on his desk. Inside is a simplified patch for the faulty logic loop. "Leo wrote it this morning before school. I refined it over lunch." Ethan looked up, incredulous. Claire shrugged. "We talk code over cereal sometimes." He opened the folder. 10 lines of code. Elegant, balanced, brutally efficient. "You both did this?" he asked. "We tried," she said. "You still have to test and integrate it." Ethan stared at the paper. "Help me," he said quietly. "Not just with this. With all of it." Claire tilted her head. "You mean as your damage control?" "I mean as my partner," he said, meeting her eyes. "Not in title, in trust, in rebuilding what they think is broken." She was quiet for a long beat. "I left the industry to protect my son," she said. "I will not step back into it if it means I lose him." "Then do it with him," Ethan said. "Both of you, your way." Claire crossed her arms. "You sure your board is ready for an 8-year-old co-consultant and a single mom who refuses to dress like a mannequin?" Ethan smiled, exhausted but sincere. "I am not sure about anything anymore, except that I trust you, and him." Claire nodded slowly. "Then we start tomorrow." And with that, the first foundation of something new, not just a company fix, but something far more personal, was set. The next morning, Claire arrived at Waitress Tech headquarters not through the front entrance, but through the engineering level. Leo skipped beside her, his oversized backpack bouncing with every step. The company's internal team was still tense. Rumors flew. Some were skeptical about Claire's involvement. Others whispered in awe about the coding kid who might have saved the company. Claire ignored them all. She headed straight to the war room, where Ethan and the core dev team were already gathered. Leo walked in and surveyed the room like a general in sneakers. "I brought Pop-Tarts," he announced, "but I will share only if you take the error logging seriously." Claire chuckled. "He gets blunt when he is focused." For the next several hours, the atmosphere shifted. Claire mapped out a simplified restructure of the search engine's query parsing logic, annotating directly on the transparent smart wall. Leo sat on the floor, laptop open, rewriting conditional parameters from memory. "You are coding without notes?" one stunned engineer asked. Leo looked up, deadpan. "Notes are for people who do not eat giasome for breakfast." By the end of the day, Claire had restructured the back-end framework, cut its size by 40%, and improved response latency. Leo's patch, once reviewed by 2 of the senior engineers, was merged into the sandboxed test environment. It passed every benchmark. Ethan stood behind the glass wall watching them. Claire in her worn gray cardigan, hair in a bun, arms streaked with dry erase marker. Leo, humming to himself while scribbling formulas. They looked completely out of place. And yet, they were the only ones who could fix what his empire could not. That night, Ethan called a private meeting with his board of directors. He presented the new framework Claire and Leo had developed. The board was impressed. Until names were brought up. "You want to credit a child in our internal architecture documentation?" one board member asked, incredulous. "And hire his mother under what title? Ghost from the past?" sneered Miranda Kessler. Ethan stood, calm but firm. "I do not care what title you give her," he said, "but the code she wrote, the model she proposed, saved us, and her son saw what none of us could. If your pride is more important than survival, then say so. I will find other investors who prefer results." Silence fell over the table. An older board member finally leaned forward and said, "It is time we evolve, just like the tech we build." Ethan smiled slightly. "Agreed." 2 weeks later, Waitress Tech's updated AI suite relaunched. It was faster, smarter, and more adaptive than anything their competitors had. A live demonstration at the next investor event showcased zero crashes, seamless queries, and for the first time, adaptive emotional response in product search. Something Claire had built years ago, now finally implemented. The crowd erupted in applause. In a small line of the release notes, buried between lines of engineering credits, it read, "Core Recovery Logic, co-authored by C. Dawson and L. Dawson." Ethan turned to Claire, standing beside him backstage. "You two did it." Claire looked down at Leo, who beamed. "No," she said. "We all did." As the applause carried on, Leo leaned toward Ethan and whispered, "Does this mean I can finally have my own server cluster?" Ethan grinned. "One step at a time, kid." The success was immediate and overwhelming. Within 48 hours of the product relaunch, Waitress Tech's stock rebounded to an all-time high. News outlets picked up the story of the miracle fix and the mystery team behind it. Then, someone dug deeper. Single mom and her 8-year-old son secretly save billion-dollar tech firm. The headline went viral. Photos of Claire and Leo began appearing everywhere, on tech blogs, mainstream media, even morning shows. Leo's classroom became a media circus. Journalists camped outside their small home. Strangers sent gifts. Some sent threats. Claire stood by the window one morning and watched as a drone hovered just outside. She shut the curtain, turned, and saw Leo hunched over his laptop, silent, withdrawn. "Do you want to take a break from coding?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "You have not said much in 2 days." Leo looked up, his voice was quiet. "I did not mean for this to happen, I just wanted to help." Claire crossed the room and knelt beside him. "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart." "I do not like when people stare," he whispered. "I do not want to be famous." She wrapped her arms around him. "Neither do I." Meanwhile, Ethan was under fire too. Industry critics accused him of using a child for publicity. Online forums debated whether Claire was exploiting her son's talent or lying about her past. Ethan's PR team begged him to make a clean break, to let the story cool. Instead, he held a press conference. In front of cameras and reporters, Ethan said plainly, "Yes, Leo is 8, and yes, he saved us. But his mind is only part of the story. What really saved this company was his mother. The woman who taught him to think, to solve, to believe he mattered." He paused. "If anyone wants to criticize me for choosing authenticity over optics, go ahead. I would rather build truth than hide behind illusion." The room was quiet, but the damage had been done. Claire saw the toll it was taking on Leo. His curiosity dimmed, his jokes quieted. His shoulders began to curl inward, the way they used to when he was scared of thunderstorms. She made a decision. That evening, she met Ethan at a quiet cafe near the bay. "I am pulling Leo out of the spotlight," she said. Ethan nodded. "I understand. Need to disappear for a while, again, reset him." He looked down at his coffee. "And what about us?" Claire gave a sad smile. "You said it yourself. Truth matters. This is mine." He reached across the table, took her hand gently. "Then let me protect it with you." Claire and Leo retreated to a quiet town along the coast, hoping for calm. For a few weeks, they found it. Mornings were spent collecting seashells, afternoons sketching algorithms on napkins, and nights reading sci-fi novels under dim yellow lamps. But silence never lasts long in the digital age. One morning, Claire's phone buzzed with a message from an old colleague she had not spoken to in years. "Check the news. He's back, and he's talking." The he was Gerald Nash, the former Orion Systems executive who had buried Claire's whistleblower report years ago, the man who had silenced her. Now he was on national television, spinning a new version of the story. "Yes, Claire Dawson was talented," he said, smiling for the camera, "but she suffered emotionally after her husband's accident. There were concerns about her stability, and we encouraged her to take time away." He painted her exit as a compassionate leave, her silence as mutual agreement. He called Leo a brilliant child who should not be used as a pawn. Claire sat frozen as the clip played. Leo, standing beside her, clenched his fists. "They are lying," he said quietly. She nodded. "But no one will believe us," he added. Claire turned to him. "Then maybe it is time they saw the truth?" She contacted Ethan. Within an hour he was on the road. That evening, inside Claire's small rented cottage, the three of them sat on the living room floor. Leo opened his laptop and began to trace code logs. Claire brought out her old backup drives, including a protected file from her final month at Orion 1 she had hidden out of fear, then forgotten. "I think I saved it under a dummy extension," she said. "We were doing data integrity simulations. I logged every line." It took hours, but they found it. A private commit trail, dozens of changes to the AI framework, a flagged anomaly, one Claire had written detailed notes about, and a deletion log showing that Gerald's assistant had scrubbed them from the final build. Leo stared at the metadata. "Melith your warning," he said, "and then published it anyway?" Claire nodded. "And blamed me for the fallout." Ethan took the drive. "Let me handle this." But Leo stopped him. "Wait," he said, "there is a better way." That night, Leo posted the commit history anonymously to an open-source ethics forum used by global developers. He included timestamps, change IDs, and a side-by-side comparison of the bug before and after the deletion. Within 12 hours, the post had over 100,000 views. By the next day, Gerald Nash was trending for all the wrong reasons. The tech world turned. Claire's story was finally being heard. A female-led cybersecurity firm released a statement verifying the logs. A former Orion whistleblower came forward, then another. Claire was offered a full public apology from the board of directors at Orion, delivered personally, and this time broadcast live. But the best moment came quietly. Leo sat beside Claire on their small porch, staring at the ocean. "Does this mean you get to be a hero now?" he asked. Claire smiled. "I do not need to be a hero, just a mother." He leaned against her shoulder. "Well, you are both." Behind them, Ethan stepped outside holding 3 mugs of cocoa. "You forgot your reward," he said, handing Leo his. Leo grinned. "Chocolate is justice." They laughed together, softly, like people learning to breathe again. Ethan stood in the center of the Veritas Tech boardroom, the city skyline glowing behind him like fire. The room was full. 10 directors, several senior investors, and Miranda Kessler, who now sat stiffly at the far end of the table. Every face was tense. "The press won't let this go," she said, flipping through headlines. "Claire Dawson is everywhere. She's connected to our last failure, and this one. It does not matter if she was right. She is a liability." "She is not a liability," Ethan said, his voice low. "She is the reason this company is still standing." A board member interjected. "Optics matter, Ethan. You know that." "Then let us talk about optics," he replied, stepping forward. "A single mother, blacklisted for telling the truth, walks away from the industry and then walks back in with her son and saves the product we could not fix. That is not bad press. That is leadership. That is integrity." "She's unpredictable," Miranda countered, "and now the kid is a public figure too. What if they make demands? What if she exposes more secrets?" Ethan looked her dead in the eye. "You are afraid of someone you cannot control." The room went still. "I will say this once," he continued. "If Claire Dawson is not welcome at Veritas Tech, then I am not either." Several board members gasped. "You are bluffing," Miranda said. "You built this company." "I did," Ethan said. "And now I want to build something better. One where truth matters more than spin. Where genius is not ignored because it comes in hoodies or waitresses' aprons." He turned to the rest of the board. "I am not asking for permission. I am offering you a choice. Stand with me or stand without me." It was bold. It was reckless. and it was absolutely sincere. A long silence followed. Then slowly the eldest board member, "Et mi hod komito," folded her hands. "You are right," she said softly. "I remember Claire from years ago. She was the only one who asked hard questions when we needed them most." One by one, the board members nodded. All except Miranda. She stood, eyes burning. "You will regret this." Ethan simply replied, "Then I will regret it with people who matter." 2 hours later, Claire received a call. She was sitting with Leo at a community garden near their cottage. He was watering a row of sunflowers he had adopted as his own. "Ethan," she answered. "We did it," he said. They stood down. Claire smiled, but said nothing at first. "I meant what I said in that room," he continued. "I would rather lose everything than let them treat you like you do not belong." "I do not want you to lose everything," she whispered. "I already found what matters," he replied. "The rest is just noise." Later that evening, Ethan arrived at the cottage. Claire opened the door, unsure what to say. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. "It is our new AI build," he said, "version 1, authored by Dawson and Dawson. Want to launch it with me?" Claire stepped back and led him in. Leo looked up from the dining table. "Are we coding or cuddling?" Ethan grinned. "Can I vote for both?" Claire laughed, fully, freely, for the first time in years. They were no longer running, no longer hiding. They were building. Together, the Veritas Tech campus looked different now. Not just because of the new security wing or the buzz of innovation that filled its halls, but because of what it represented. It had become a place where talent did not need permission, where truth was not punished, where new beginnings were built, not from perfection, but from resilience. And it all started with a boy who saw a bug in the code, and a mother who refused to stay silent. 6 months later, Claire stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Dawson Center for Ethical AI, a research and mentorship hub funded by Veritas Tech and supported by Claire's own initiatives. The facility would serve young coders from underserved communities, especially kids raised by single parents, just like Leo. Ethan stood beside her in a classic navy suit, unbuttoned at the collar. Leo bounced between them wearing a custom hoodie that read, "Bug Hunter in Chief." Cameras flashed, applause erupted as the ribbon fell. Claire was asked to speak. She stepped to the podium, her voice clear and grounded. "I never imagined standing here again, not in tech, not in public, not seen. But life has a funny way of bringing us back to unfinished stories. And this time, we are writing it differently." She looked down at Leo. "Everything I thought I lost, I found again in my son, and in a company that finally chose people over politics." Ethan smiled from behind her, his eyes soft, unwavering. And to every woman who was ever told her silence was easier, to every child whose ideas were dismissed because they came from a smaller voice, this place is for you. The crowd rose to their feet. Later that evening, as golden sunlight bathed the rooftop garden where they held the celebration, Claire sat with Ethan and Leo under a string of warm lights. Leo was hunched over a tablet, coding a new puzzle challenge for the next student group. Claire leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Do you ever miss the chaos?" she asked. He chuckled. "This is the chaos. I just like it better now." She looked up at him. "Still terrible at debugging coffee machines, though." He kissed the top of her head. "Some things never change." Leo looked up. "Mom? Ethan, can I ask you something?" They both turned. "Are we like a real family now?" Claire's breath caught. Ethan reached out and took Leo's hand. "You always were," he said. Leo nodded, content. "Okay, just checking." The sun dipped below the city skyline. The three of them sat close. No more secrets. No more shadows. Just a mother, a boy, and the man who chose them both. Whatever came next, they would build it together. If this love story and incredible journey touched your heart, do not forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more soul-stirring stories, emotional stories, and motivational stories just like this one. We absolutely love reading every single comment, so tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And if you have ever believed in second chances, in hidden genius, or in the powerful love between a parent and a child, we would love to hear your story. Your words mean the world to us, and this community grows stronger with every voice shared. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.